I get it, you're staring at the price tag on a new table saw and wondering if it's really worth the cash, especially when you've already seen a few budget options that promise the world but leave you with a pile of scrap. You're probably thinking, will this thing actually handle my weekend projects without turning my garage into a noisy, dusty nightmare? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks setting up a Jet ProShop II in a 150 square foot shop, swapping blades, and testing the dust collection. So let's talk about what that looks like in everyday use, and whether the trade-offs line up with what you need. First off, the ProShop II is a 10-inch, 30-inch rip capacity table saw, and that size lands it squarely between the tiny benchtop models and the massive contractor saws. For anyone who builds occasional furniture, frames a deck, or does a lot of sheet goods work on a hobby level, the 30-inch rip is enough to get most 48 sheets through without a second pass. The 13/4 HP motor does a respectable job on softwoods and standard plywood, but I did notice a slight slowdown when feeding a thick hardwood board at full speed. If you're planning on ripping 2 inches wide hardwood or doing continuous heavy-duty work, you'll start to feel the motor's limits after a while. One of the first things I appreciated was the quick-release riving knife. In the past, changing the riving knife on a saw meant pulling a spring-loaded lever, fiddling with a tiny pin, and praying it wouldn't snap. With Jet's design, you just pull the release, slide the old knife out, and snap the new one in place. I swapped it a few times while cutting different thicknesses, and the whole process took less than 10 seconds. That's a real time saver if you're moving between a trim board and a rough cut, because you're not stuck wrestling with a stubborn mechanism in the middle of a project. Blade changes themselves are also painless thanks to the redesigned arbor lock. I'm used to the twist and pull method that can be finicky, especially when the dust from the last cut has settled around the spindle. Jet's lock lets you press a lever, turn the arbor a half turn, and the blade drops out cleanly. It's the kind of small convenience that adds up over dozens of cuts, no more bruised fingers or a screwdriver wedged into a tight spot. The single belt drive, meanwhile, is a bit of a double-edged sword. On the plus side, tensioning the belt is as simple as turning a single knob. You don't have to chase a second belt around a pulley to keep it even. On the downside, a single belt can be a little more prone to slipping under heavy load, so I keep an eye on it when I'm doing long, straight cuts on denser material. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something to be aware of if you plan to push the motor close to its limits. Dust collection is a constant headache with any saw, and the ProShop II tries to address it with an improved shroud around the blade. In my shop, I pair the saw with a 2-horsepower shop vac, and the shroud does a decent job funneling most of the particles into the hose. I still see a fine mist of sawdust on the floor after a long ripping session, but it's far less than what I dealt with on a previous 8-inch model that had a basic guard. If you're sensitive to dust or have a small workspace, you'll want a decent vacuum anyway, but the built-in shroud certainly reduces the amount of cleanup required. Safety is another area where the ProShop II tries to be thoughtful. The magnetic paddle switch is recessed and requires a deliberate push to turn the saw on, which cuts down on accidental startups. I've had a few friends who accidentally bumped a non-magnetic switch on their old saw and watched the blade spin up while they were reaching for a piece of scrap. The magnetic version feels more intentional. There's a satisfying click that tells you the machine is truly on. Additionally, the motor reset switch has been moved to the power switch itself, so you don't have to hunt for a tiny reset button tucked away on the back panel when the motor overloads. The saw also includes onboard storage for the included accessories: wrenches, a blade wrench, the riving knife, and a few spare bolts. It's a small touch, but in a cramped shop it means you're not